Okay, so let's talk about something we almost never talk about, death. It's a topic that can feel heavy, for sure, but it's also the one single experience we are all going to share. In this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers on how we die today, medically, socially, and emotionally, to try and make this universal process just a little less of an unknown.
So let me start by asking you a question, a pretty personal one. If you had the choice, where would you want to spend your final days? Just think about that for a second. Would you want to be at home, surrounded by family, or maybe in a hospital with all the medical support right there?
Well, it turns out the vast majority of us want the exact same thing. A whopping 80% of Americans say they hope to die at home. But the reality, it couldn't be more different. 60% of us die in hospitals, and another 20% in nursing homes. That leaves just 1 in 5 people, only 20%, who actually get that final wish. And this huge gap between what we want and what actually happens, well, that's right at the heart of the modern experience of death.
So how in the world did this gap get so wide? Well, to really get a handle on how we die today, we actually have to look back. Because believe it or not, the entire experience of dying has been completely transformed over the last 100 years or so.
Think about it. A century ago, death was usually fast. Infectious diseases like the flu or pneumonia were the big killers. It was often sudden. But today, the script has totally flipped. Most of us will die from chronic diseases, things like heart disease, cancer, diabetes. And what that means is that dying is no longer a quick event, but a long, drawn-out process.
And you can see that landscape so clearly in this chart. Heart disease and cancer, both chronic illnesses, are still number 1 and 2. But then look at 2021. Something really big shifted. An infectious disease, COVID-19, shot up to become the 3rd leading cause of death. It was this really jarring reminder that the era of deadly pandemics, well, it isn't over. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. Over 1 million people in the U.S. had died from COVID-19 by the middle of 2022. It was a massive shock to a healthcare system that had spent decades really gearing up for these slow, chronic diseases, not some fast-moving, unpredictable virus.
You know, this whole modern, lengthy process of dying has created another kind of challenge. It's forced us to confront the fact that death isn't just one single physical event. It's also a social one. And to really understand this, we need to look at 2 totally different ideas: physical death and social death.
Okay, first up, you've got physical death. This is the official clinical definition. It's the moment when your body's functions, your breathing, your circulation, and all of your brain activity have completely and irreversibly stopped. It's a pretty clear line, right? Drawn by doctors and coroners.
But then there's this other concept, and it's much more complicated. It's called social death. And this has nothing to do with the body. It's about the person. It's what happens when people, friends, family, even doctors, start to pull away from someone who's terminally ill. They start treating them, well, like they're already gone.
So what does that actually look like? Well, it's when people start talking about the person as if they're not even in the room, or making these huge decisions about their care without even asking them. It can even be subtle, like when everyone stops having real, meaningful conversations and only talks about the weather because the reality is just too uncomfortable to face.
And why on earth does this happen? It's usually not malicious. It's a deeply human reaction, really. Facing death in someone else can make us feel totally helpless. We don't know what to say, we don't know what to do. So to protect ourselves from that awkwardness, from that discomfort, we pull away. It's almost a defense mechanism.
Okay, so if that's the reality, what can we actually do about it? How do we navigate all this better? This next part is all about taking back some control. It's about understanding the options that are out there so we can make our own wishes known loud and clear.
2 terms you hear a lot are palliative care and hospice care, and people get them mixed up all the time. Think of it this way. Palliative care is all about comfort and relieving pain. You can get it at any stage of a serious illness, even while you're still trying to cure it. Hospice care is also about comfort, but it's for when you've stopped curative treatments and a doctor believes you're in your final months of life. So, how do you make sure your choices are actually respected? Well, the most powerful tools you have are called advance directives. These are basically simple legal documents that let you state exactly what you want for your end-of-life care ahead of time. They make sure your voice is heard, even if you can't speak for yourself anymore.
And they generally come in 2 main flavors. A living will is your what. It's where you write down what medical treatments you do or do not want. Then there's the durable power of attorney for healthcare. That's your who. It lets you name a specific person you trust to make those tough decisions for you.
And yet, you'd think everyone would have these, right? Well, shockingly, more than a quarter of all adults in the US admit they've given little or even no thought to this stuff. But taking the time to plan, it's not morbid. It's actually a profound gift you can give to yourself and to the people who love you.
But of course, the story doesn't just end when someone dies. The final piece of this whole puzzle is the process of grieving for the people left behind. And you know what? Just like our understanding of dying has changed, our ideas about grief have evolved a whole lot too. Now, I'm sure most of us have heard of the famous 5 stages of grief from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And it was absolutely groundbreaking. It gave us a language, a framework for these huge, overwhelming emotions that come with loss.
But here's the thing. More recent research has started to poke some holes in that idea that grief is a neat little checklist. One major study found something that's actually pretty surprising. Acceptance isn't always the final stage people work toward. For many, it's the most common feeling right from the beginning, all mixed in with waves of yearning for the person they lost.
So a more current way to think about it is something called the dual process model. Instead of a straight line, picture a pendulum. It suggests we swing back and forth. On one side, you have loss orientation, where you're looking back and really feeling the pain. On the other side, you have restoration orientation, where you're looking forward, figuring out how to adapt to your new life.
And there's one more really helpful way to look at this, which frames mourning not as stages you just go through, but as active tasks you have to do. Things like accepting the reality of the loss, allowing yourself to work through the pain, adjusting to a world without that person, and finally, finding a way to start a new life while still keeping that connection to them alive. And all of this really brings us to one final big question. When you think about everything, about that huge gap between how we want to die and how we actually do, about the quiet pain of social death and the messy, complicated reality of grief, what is our role in all of this? How can we, as a society, and just as individuals, do a better job of supporting people who are grieving,